Welcome to Global View. Today we have absolutely the honor to sit down with a real fighter, lawmaker Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna. She's a member of the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability and the House Foreign Affairs Committee, two of the most consequential platforms shaping the national conversation on transparency, governance, and America's role on the global stage. In Congress, she has emerged as one, if not the strongest, advocates for government transparency and accountability. She also chairs the task force on the declassification of federal secrets. Her work places her at the intersection of domestic oversight and international policy, where decisions made in Washington have far-reaching implications both at home and abroad. Congresswoman Luna, it's such an honor to be here with you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Very happy. I think there's a lot to cover and you guys came at a good time.
Absolutely. And I would love to start with foreign policy. You recently hosted a Russian delegation of lawmakers, the first time in 20 years. And you actually, against all criticism, made a point that diplomacy and dialogue are the real path to peace, leading through diplomacy. How far do you think we are to reach a peace agreement?
I think the peace agreement currently in talks we're very close. I think from internal communications, we're hearing both Ukrainians, Russians, they both want it. The Russian government has agreed to the Witkoff-Kushner-Trump plan on peace. And I think really the only holdout right now is Zelensky. And the problem with that is that if you even just look at how this entire thing's been handled over the last couple of years, like first of all, from a diplomatic perspective, the United States should have always taken the position of trying to negotiate peace over sending weaponry, period. What we found out, though, with recent declassifications from ODNI Gabbard, which I was surprised it didn't get more media, but I think it didn't get more media because of the 2016 narrative of Russia collusion, which we now know is also false. And I promise I'll get back to that initially, but this is a lot to kind of explain for full context here. When you have people that are then, before even opening up the door to communication and to talk about peace, they're advocating for war, and then you look at these same people and they have massive personal investments with different defense contractors that are getting these weapons contracts. So not only do you know that they're not actually advocating for the right thing, but that they're also personally enriching themselves. The stuff that was declassified out of Gabbard's office showed that a lot of the funding that we had actually sent initially to Ukraine that these people said that we needed to send actually ended up going from Ukraine into Joe Biden's re-election campaign. Wow. That in itself is horrifying. We had been pushing for audits. Where's the money going? And as you can see now, for good reason, I'm very happy that I never voted for that funding. But from a diplomatic perspective, when you have people going to one side, for example, to Ukraine, meeting with Zelensky, meeting with members of their parliament, I actually went for myself to have those same conversations. I haven't met with Zelensky, but I met with the members of parliament. And then you see that they're not going to the other side to have the same conversations. How could you then say that you're actually advocating in the best interest of your constituency or your government when you're choosing to not have open dialogue and discussion with another nuclear superpower? One that you would think, being on foreign affairs, that this had been done for other Congresses, and to my horror, and also to my surprise, it hadn't been done in over 20 years. And that's a complete failure in diplomacy. And so we actually did have a bipartisan delegation. It was myself, 3 other Republicans, and 1 other Democrat. And then we had a delegation from Russia that was about the same number. But that should have happened a while ago. And I will continue to say and continue to hold to my position that I will continue to keep open dialogue. I will continue to advocate for those peace talks. And I will continue also to present to the American people that the option on the table, if we can end the war, is a $2 trillion trade deal, not just with the United States, but with Russia. And that's going to benefit Ukraine as well. And in addition to Europe, why would they not want that? And so, I think that we did something pretty amazing. I will continue to keep those discussions open. I know that there's talks right now about a delegation trip to Russia, although, a lot of people right now are campaigning for re-election, but that is something that has been extended formally from their government to ours. And I will also, finish with saying this, that Secretary Rubio was instrumental in actually allowing those talks to take place. So to be clear, you do have a separation of powers, right? Like you have the State Department, which functions under the authority of the White House, and then you have Congress. But Congress outlasts different administrations. So we're supposed to be the backbone of extending and actually maintaining some form of consistency in that relationship building and ensuring that we don't get into another global conflict. And so he was the one that actually had authorized and ensured that the State Department gave visas to those members to come here to engage in those talks. And I'm glad that he did, because there were still people in the State Department that were trying to block that.
And this is remarkable, even because most of these lawmakers are under sanctions. So it takes a process to lift the sanction, open up the dialogue. And actually, while you were hosting this meeting here in Washington, we were in Moscow.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
We were in Moscow, and this Academy of Diplomacy as speakers at this foreign panel of international speakers, and the chairman of the foreign affairs for the Committee of Foreign Affairs at the Duma, his name is Leonid Slutsky, actually is essentially
I'm familiar.
Yes, so it's essentially the person to go to speak about the voice of the parliament on foreign affairs, raised a really critical point, like how much sanctions are affecting the dialogue with the lawmakers, because of course, how can we even talk to lawmakers from Russia if these people are under the weight of sanctions? Do you think it's the time to lift the sanction or to make this dialogue possible?
I think right now the first steps that were takeaways from the meeting is discussions about Russia competing in the Olympics. Another one would be to allow there to be an exchange, which used to exist, of debate teams from different universities. I know that Representative Ogles is currently working with some of his local universities, and there was an organization there as well that's familiar with universities across the country to kind of help open up that dialogue, and then eventually lift those sanctions. But also too, I think looking into the ability to trade is a huge deal as well. But right now, the one thing that's hampering that is basically getting the peace deal over the table, right? So as soon as that's done, which I think that we're very close. I think that based on what we're hearing out of just murmurs in Congress, and then also too out of Ukraine, people don't want the war to continue. There needs to be an end to this, right? And so if I'm Zelensky and I'm sitting there thinking about what my next step is, it is to accept the peace deal so that people aren't dying on both sides, right? Like, we can't have this continue. And then to see if there's a way. I don't know that he'll win re-election. I think right now people kind of see him as someone that maybe failed in the negotiations aspect too, and then also too, I think historically, after things like this, people usually don't get reelected, and maybe that's why he's holding out on trying to actually solidify that. But eventually, if he's not negotiating in good faith, and if he continues to pause, I think that it is a very realistic likelihood that the administration pauses weapons sales to NATO. And if they do that, then Ukraine can't continue the war. And so it would almost force the peace deal to happen. We'll see. I don't speak for the administration, but if I had to speculate, that would be my guess.
And we're very grateful for a representative like you that takes peace very seriously.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, you can't just say one thing and say, I'm against endless wars and I don't want there to be conflict, and then refuse to talk to another nuclear superpower. It just doesn't make sense. But again, people are very concerned about this idea, and there's still people that try to push the narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. We can even talk about that specifically, in that if you look at how much damage that occurred in regards to foreign policy, and those people were not held accountable at all. And you literally have fractured relationships with another, country that we should be talking to. And so we talk to China, we can't talk to Russia. I mean, Russia's not buying up land around our military bases. Russia's not, sending people to put IEDs outside of MacDill Air Force Base in my district. Russia's not sitting there and responsible for launching agro-terrorist bioweapons in our farmlands. China is, yet we still have open dialogue with China. So these are all things that, I know that it might be considered a dicey topic for some, but I'm not afraid of talking about it.
No, and I think that's exactly why you are taking the mantle of leadership on such a critical issue. You mentioned the State Department's role and the White House role in peace. What's Congress's role in these peace talks, and how can Congress get this over the line? Well,
typically the White House and State Department will take point on negotiations, even with hostage deals. We still have diplomatic authority to do that as well. But Congress's role really should be backing the administration, and then also to providing that consistency, because as you know, administrations come and go every 4 years, so do the appointees. But if you can establish the relationships with members of Congress, sometimes this is a separate conversation on term limits, but they can stay here for decades. They outlast many people, and I think when you can establish that dialogue and communication, it can prevent a lot of miscommunications. But again, if you're looking at historically what happened, I mean, it was the executive branch under Obama that intentionally fractured the relationships of Russia and the United States in an effort to get Hillary Clinton elected, and as we know, we all saw how that played out. So I'm sure you were a target of that. But
I know a little bit about
yeah,
that.
you might know a little bit about that. So, we're trying to take the knife out, if you will.
Follow up to that, declassification. You've been a critical proponent of declassification and getting some of these government secrets out, from UFOs to JFK Jr., MLK, the Russiagate that you just mentioned. How can Congress take the next step to actually help get this information out to the American public to not only restore relations at the bilateral relations level that you mentioned, but for transparency and accountability and restoring rule of law in this country?
Yeah, so I think the first thing in regards to JFK, MLK, RFK files, and UAP, all of that, so the RFK, JFK, and MLK files was declassified under an executive order, and ODNI Gabbard released that, same with CIA Director Radcliffe and Patel. And that has been put on the National Archives. Even just on the JFK stuff alone, we found admissions of the CIA that they lied to Congress, essentially covered up. And my final, I guess, perspective is that a rogue faction, the CIA, assassinated the president. I mean, we even had testimony from a doctor that was in the operating room that Kennedy was brought to in Dallas that said that he was shot from both the front and the back. So there was multiple shooters. So, there's that. People had a hunch, they were correct. But in regards to UAP, I mean, President Trump said he's going to declassify. We're currently running that down with my task force. All of that stuff I'm hoping to put directly onto the archives. I think that that's the best way, and you just let the American people decide what they're going to do with it, and look through the information for themselves and then come to their own conclusions. But in regards to the aspect of restoring trust with the federal government, I mean, people tend to say, well, and we truly are, I guess, the best compared to other countries in this perspective, but when you have bad actors that go not punished, it really does set a precedent that there are people that are above the law because of position of power, and that can't be tolerated. And so I guess a little example of that would be the expulsions of 2 members of Congress. You saw that they ended up resigning, but we were willing to expel them, and they had done some pretty unethical, immoral, and illegal crap up here on the Hill. I think the same needs to happen, though, with people in the intelligence communities, people in appointed positions. If you're breaking the law, take the partisan politics out of it, you need to be held accountable. And I think that that's that aspect. Dulcie, speaking to the 2016 Russia collusion stuff, has been declassifying a ton. And I don't think as many people are, because to some people it happened so long ago, and I would say that probably maybe 10% of the American populace are like fully is into the weeds on what happened with all of that. But if I had to summarize it, they basically legally spied, and they were trying to set people up, and they broke foreign policy. That's really what happened. Those people should go to jail.
I couldn't agree more, even because I lived it in my family, and we're still looking for accountability. And what really marks the difference, in my perspective, between you and many other people in Congress is that you're not directing investigation only outward, but also inward.
Yeah.
So you are now you subpoena the records of these settlement funds for sexual harassment.
Oh yeah, and 3/4 of Congress try to block it.
And I love that, honestly, personally. And when you wrote the trash out, I think that's what we really need.
It's garbage day on the Hill.
We'll love it. So we expect much trash yet to come out, or
I think, if you see the amount of people that voted for, the off-ramp of sending it to ethics, ethics is where things go to die, and that means no accountability. Anytime something goes to ethics, there's zero accountability. I think, so the records, from 2017 onward, you can see which offices have settlements, which you should look at. But from 2017 previously up into the 90s when this was created, that went all under wraps, and there's a lot there. Over $18 million has been paid out. $18 million in taxpayer funds have been paid to cover people's sex. Like, it's not like it's part of your job to sexually harass someone. And so I don't think that taxpayers should be responsible. I think the members should be responsible. If you're sexually harassing someone, that shouldn't be covered by the office, okay? That's not like qualified immunity. So that would, I think, be one of the changes that need to be made, but then also too, I think, an overhaul in the entire ethics process. And then obviously the removal of pensions from members of Congress that are expelled or resign as a result of this stuff, or if they retire, which is like the new way of saying that you got kicked out for something. So we'll see what happens, but I frankly got really frustrated. We are not all created the same. And when you have a member of Congress whose staffer lights himself on fire because they were having an affair that started with sexual harassment, the fact that that person calls himself the Honorable and I call myself the Honorable, the two are not the same.
True, because you truly are.
One of us got to go, and it wasn't me.
True, I agree.
No, it's 100% correct. So what's the next step that you see coming from these, consequential events from Swalwell, some of these other people? What's next?
I think Swalwell has some criminal stuff he has to worry about. There's multiple investigations down in New York. Los Angeles DAs are looking at him. I think the DOJ is probably looking at him. There's a member in the Senate who I received some stuff about that was just beyond crazy, and so I forwarded that immediately to Thune, who Thune doesn't like me, I don't think. Pretty sure he doesn't like me. But nonetheless, I had my chief contact his chief. They acknowledged receipt. They sent it to ethics and also gave us the number to ethics over there. So we're sending everything that we have. But I think that the slush fund reports that come out, if people are still here, we'll see, because that's a lot of money. $18 million that's not like a small amount here.
Absolutely, and that's true. Shouldn't be taxpayers.
Yeah, I think that if people are still here and they had that, they're probably going to get cooked in their elections. So, So be it.
I have one last question on my side, and it's about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this? I'm very fascinated. I watch all the shows,
all the documentaries.
All the documentaries. I'm like obsessed. So, do you think from this declassification we'll learn something about past interaction with UFOs, or just explanation of a phenomenon that we don't understand?
I think for the declassification as a whole, you'll probably see, how the government responded. We're not going to tell people what to believe. Mm-hmm. You'll definitely see similar footage and photos to what we presented in the last hearing, where we had a UAP deflecting a Hellfire missile, which, by the way, no country has that type of tech. I don't care who it is. So, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how people react to that. But the federal government for so long was like, this stuff, they wouldn't comment on it, or they would try to block it, which is an admission in itself. Because if it really wasn't real, you'd say, you'd acknowledge it and be like, yeah, that's, but they don't do that. So we'll see what ends up happening.
You mentioned Senator Thune, and you mentioned some of the surveillance abuses. Obviously, FISA is up for renewal, and the Save America Act. And Senator Thune seems to be kind of a thorn in the side of both of those issues.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Where do you stand with FISA renewal and the Save America Act, and where do you see this going on both of those issues?
I've never voted for FISA. I was actually one of the few, I think I was one of 2 or 3 that did a motion to recommit it. So there's that. On voter ID, that's the number one most important issue in the country, and it has to be attached to a must-pass piece of legislation, which would be FISA. Mm-hmm. And I said the only way I'd vote for FISA is if voter ID was attached. So as of right now, I'm not supporting FISA because it's not attached. And Thune could remove this filibuster. He could embrace the standing filibuster, and he's not. So this is on him.
It's on him.
Yeah.
It was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I don't need to tell our audience where to find Congresswoman Luna, but please, besides X, where they can follow your amazing work.
You can follow me on all of my social media accounts personally at Real Anna Paulina, and then if you're looking for my official work, it's at Rep Luna.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you. It was
you.
a honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. It was a real honor and a real pleasure to be with you.
Thanks.